Welcome to Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss and discover the challenges and triumphs of those living with NLD, nonverbal learning disability, and other learning challenges such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and any other invisible learning differences that one may live with. And I like to interview individuals as well who live with various learning challenges. So if you know anybody, please point me their way. Or if you are that individual, I would love to interview you on various topics. So please let me know. And I welcome you to this podcast. Good morning or good afternoon. This is Jennifer Purcell with Living with a Visible Learning Challenge, and I'm going to be exploring, did the Nazi go after neurodivergent individuals during the Holocaust? So if you feel like this might not be age appropriate for you or for the audience you want to share it with, please use your discretion on that. Have you ever wondered if there were historical events that got rid of, or made neurodivergence disappear from the human race or population without very many knowing? I thought it would be interesting, appalling, astonishing, and unimaginable to see if any of the individuals that were exterminated in the Holocaust were neurodivergent. I'm sorry if you or if you know anybody who was lost during the Holocaust or due to the Holocaust. This was beyond words terrible time in human history. And for those of you who might want to learn more about the Holocaust, there's a great museum in Washington, D.C., in Virginia, where I was recently on vacation, and there's a good Holocaust museum there. Well, not good in terms of what happened, but good in terms of describing what happened and comparing what the Americans knew to what the Germans knew back then about the Holocaust. And that was interesting to me. So I would go there if you want to learn more about it. So the first article is titled Asperger's Syndrome, the Nazi Regime and the Dangerous Power of Labeling People by Edith Scheffer, updated April 27th of 2018 and originally published April 26th of 2018. Quote, discovering these stories, it was difficult to reconcile Asperger's role in the killing program with his reputed support for children he deemed promising. Both were in the documentary record. The double-sided character of Asperger's actions led me to realize the double-sided nature of Nazism as a whole. The Reich's project to transform humanity involved both treatment and elimination. Some individuals could be remediated to meet Nazi standards, and some needed to be eradicated, whereas Jews were to be eliminated as a race. For example, certain people with Slavic heritage might be Germanized, or the asocial might be taught to work. Similarly, for Asperger, those on the favorable side of his autistic range could be taught social integration and integration, and even be recognized for special abilities. They were to be given first-rate care. Meanwhile, children like 3-year-old Ulrich Mayhofer, probably didn't say that right, whom Asperger described as severely autistic, were to be killed at Spilgerd. Sorry. Close quote. So that I thought was interesting because it gives different I guess you could say, labels or words to separate the people with Asperger's here or autism in terms of it being of them being asocial. So meaning that they're not very socially um, active or acute or well in those categories, and that they may not be favorable or are favorable, and that they're in an autistic range and could be taught social integration, which is true. You can teach that, but I would say to only some extent, because that can be a little tricky for some neurodivergent individuals, depending on how severe their social symptoms are in terms of reading, being able to read body language or not being able to read it, and trying to teach them how to read it, because that is important skill. Um, and that if they were severely autistic, that meant they were killed right away, which is like, it's so unfortunate that that happened. And it's like, how do you, I wonder how they defined it that back then, of who's severely autistic. Was it the nonverbal ones maybe, or the ones that were really not good socially? I'm not sure. So the next article is titled "The Murder of People with Disabilities." Um, Quote, despite public protests in 1941, the Nazi leadership continued this program in secret throughout the war. About 200,000 people with disabilities were murdered between 1940 and 1945. Close quote. So that I included to give you an idea of about how many people were murdered. That is a lot of people in 5 years. And I would suspect it's probably more than that, because um, who knows if they couldn't find some people, and then you can't report it if you can't find them. um, so let's see. The last article is titled "Was Dr. Asperger's a Nazi?" And the question still haunts autism. From January 20th of 2016 by Steve Silberman. Quote, I focused primarily on the years leading up to World War II and on the crucial work that Asperger and his colleagues, did at the children's clinic at the university before the Nazis took over and transformed the once hallowed institution of learning into a center for the study of racial hygiene, staffed by bumbling fanatics. What I found led me to conclude that Asperger was the true discoverer of what we now call the autism spectrum, a lifelong condition with a broad and strikingly heterogeneous range of clinical presentations. To come to that conclusion, I drew on the first case history of autism written at the Children's Clinic in 1935 by Asperger's colleague psychologist Annie Weiss, which has been overlooked for 80 years. Weiss evaluated a boy named Gottfried, who exhibited many traits now considered classic manifestations of autism, including difficulty in relating to his peers, which made him a frequent target of bullying, heightened sensitivity to sound, and a rigidly local cast of mind, meaning it was far hard for him to change his perspective, probably. After having Gottfried take an intelligence test, one that he undertook with great difficulty, Wiz came to an astonishingly persistent conclusion. Instead of presuming that this shy, awkward boy was feeble-minded, as many of his teachers had. Wees noticed that Gottfried was acutely anxious about violating the rules of the test, which hampered his performance. She concluded that, in fact, he was highly intelligent, but in a way that could be captured by the usual standardized tests. Dr. Asperger and his colleagues would eventually examine more than 200 children with autism at all levels of ability, from non-speaking children who would always require assistance in their daily lives to a young man who became an assistant professor of astronomy after detecting an error in one of Isaac Newton's proofs. Asperger noted the prevalence of autistic traits among distinguished scientists and went so far as to say, it seems that for success in science and art, a dash of autism is essential. The necessary ingredient may be an ability to turn away from the everyday world, from the simply practical, an ability to rethink a subject with originality so as to create a new untrodden ways. Donovan and Zucker's account of that lecture omits any reference to the most radical statement Asperger made that day. His observation and his patient's impairments were inextricable from their special gifts, forming natural, necessary, interconnected aspects of one well-knit, harmonious personality. Later, he would make the precedent suggestion that the enhanced pattern recognition abilities of his autistic patients would make them valuable code breakers for the rich. That's Keen of Germany. This view was completely at odds with the eugenics core belief that humanity could only thrive by shedding the burden of providing disabled people with the support they need while they make contributions that only they can. Close quote. I thought that article was interesting because of it saying you need a dash of autism to really contribute to science and math in a significant way. And, maybe to some extent that's true because they think that Newton and other scientists like him had Asperger's or autism. And it is true that people with autism and ADHD to some extent can well, both of them can zone out the world around them and be able to focus in intently on a subject. So can people with NLDs. So who knows what those people back then actually had if they weren't tested. So the last article is titled Disabled People. There is a video on this page that I will share the link to because it shares statistics and facts, especially about a 19-year-old woman who was forced to be sterilized or killed by the Nazi due to being disabled and determined to be a burden to society. Quote, severely mentally and physically disabled people, as well as those perceived to have disabilities, were targeted because of Nazi beliefs that disabled people were a burden both to society and to the state. From 1939 to 1941, the Nazi carried out a program and enthusiasm known as the T4 program. The name T4 is an abbreviation of, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that word, TIERGARTENSTRASSE. I'll give you the word in the transcript. The address, the T4 program, the address from which the program was coordinated. Propaganda against the mentally disabled in 1933, the law of the prevention of hereditary diseased offspring was passed, allowing for the forced sterilization of those regarded as unfit. This included people with conditions such as epilepsy, schizophrenia, and alcoholism, prisoners, nursing homes, asylums, care homes for the elderly, and special schools were targeted to select people for sterilization. It has been estimated that between 1933 and 1939, 3,000, sorry, 3,600,000 individuals were submitted to forced sterilization. So 360,000. Wow. In 1939, the killing of disabled children and adults began. All children under the age of 3 who had illness or a disability such as Down syndrome or cerebral palsy were targeted under the T4 program. A panel of medical experts were required to give their approval for the enthusiasm or supposed mercy killing of each child. It is estimated that close to 250,000 disabled people were murdered under the Nazi regime. Wow. Close quote. So that article gives you an astonishing amount of information in terms of the number of people, the number of neurodivergents killed, unfortunately. And to wrap up, I think this will give you an idea of how many people were with disabilities or learning differences were killed during the Holocaust. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg with that. And this only touches upon the people with disabilities. There were many people who didn't have disabilities who were also killed during the Holocaust, the Jews. So, like I said in the beginning, the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. is a very good one to go to. I'm sure there are other ones in other areas of the country that are good as well. And as usual, I will include links for you to read more on your own. And I hope that you all have a happier way of spending your Friday than maybe listening to these appalling facts. But I think they are facts that you should listen to and be knowledgeable about and know because you know about them. Hopefully, there's a way that we can't repeat it in history. So that is today's episode.
I hope that episode was well worth it for you to listen to and that you were able to take something away from it, even if you don't have a learning challenge, or if you do. I hope it was extra worthwhile for you so that you are able to learn something and maybe journal and jot down some few takeaways so that the next time you experience that challenge yourself, you're able to um, learn how to breathe through it more easily, or maybe not have a meltdown or a tantrum, or be able to take away more learning from it and not make the same mistake twice, and be able to also help somebody else go through that experience if you have a friend who has a learning difference and you are neurotypical. So I hope you will be able to have some experiences in your life now that you have listened to this episode.